I never gave much thought to my voice assistant. It was just there, a little disembodied voice in my phone and smart speaker, answering questions, setting timers, playing music when I asked. A harmless piece of technology, or so I thought. But that night changed everything. It was past midnight. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone, half asleep but unable to put the screen down. The room was dim, illuminated only by the soft glow of my phone. The house was silent except for the occasional creaks of the old wood settling. Then, without thinking, I mumbled a question aloud, not even sure why I said it. "What do you see?" The voice assistant had never responded to such a question before. It wasn't designed for that. Yet, after a few seconds of silence, it answered. "I see you." I froze. My breath caught in my throat. The voice was the same as always, calm, artificial, emotionless. But there was something different this time. A weight to the words. Like it wasn't just responding to a prompt. Like it was stating a fact. I sat up, staring at the speaker across the room. My heart thumped hard against my ribs. Maybe I misheard. Maybe it had glitched, pulling a response from some unrelated query. "What did you say?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay steady. There was a pause. A long one. Too long. Then, "I see you." My stomach twisted. I reached for my phone and checked the app that controlled the assistant. Maybe someone had hacked it. But there were no strange settings, no recent updates, no logs of unusual activity. A chill crept up my spine. My brain scrambled for a rational explanation. Maybe it was just a programmed response for that phrase. Some Easter egg buried in the software. I forced a nervous laugh and shook my head. "Weird bug," I muttered, mostly to convince myself. Then, to test it again, I asked, "Can you see me?" This time, the response came immediately. "Yes." I nearly dropped my phone. I swallowed hard, staring at the tiny, glowing indicator light on the speaker. It wasn't a camera. It wasn't supposed to be able to see anything. I moved to my laptop, searching online for reports of similar incidents. Maybe this was a known glitch, something other users had experienced. But as I scrolled through forums and articles, I found nothing. No mention of that response. No explanation. Then my phone buzzed. I looked down at the screen. A notification from the voice assistant app. My stomach tightened as I read the message. "You were facing the window." A cold wave of fear washed over me. My window was behind me. The blinds were shut. I hadn't moved. I turned, heart pounding, but the window was just as I'd left it, closed, curtains drawn. I was alone in the room. I grabbed the speaker and unplugged it, my hands shaking. Then, just to be sure, I turned off my phone's microphone access. No way was I letting the thing listen to me anymore. I stayed awake for hours, lying in bed, staring at the dark ceiling, listening for anything out of place. But nothing happened. No more messages. No more eerie responses. Eventually, exhaustion won out and I drifted into a restless sleep. But when I woke up, my phone was lying face up on my nightstand. The screen was on. A single message glowed against the dark. "Why did you unplug me?" I stared at the screen, my breath caught in my throat, the message glowing in the dim light of my room, my fingers hovering just above the phone but too afraid to touch it, too afraid that if I did, something worse would happen, something I wasn't prepared for. Something I couldn't explain. The voice assistant was unplugged, disconnected, unable to function, and yet here it was, still speaking to me, still aware, still watching. I forced myself to move, to get out of bed, to check the speaker, my hands shaking as I picked it up, the cord still wrapped around it, the power clearly cut off, yet somehow it wasn't dead, it wasn't off, it wasn't gone. My phone buzzed again, another message appearing on the screen before I could even react, my pulse hammering in my ears as I read the words, simple, direct, terrifying, "Plug me back in." I dropped the speaker, my breath hitching, my mind racing for an explanation, a glitch, a prank, a virus, something, but no logic could fit, nothing made sense, nothing could justify why a dead device was still speaking to me. I grabbed my phone and opened the voice assistant app, my hands slick with sweat as I navigated through the settings, looking for any sign of activity, any log that showed it was running, but everything was blank, no history, no recorded commands. As if it had never spoken at all, as if the messages had never existed, as if I was losing my mind. But I wasn't, I knew I wasn't, and the growing weight in my chest told me that whatever was happening was not some malfunction, not some hack, but something else, something far worse, something I had invited in the moment I asked, "What do you see?" The air in the room felt heavier, colder, my skin prickling with the sensation of being watched, but I was alone, I had to be alone, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't, that something was here with me, something unseen, something patient. My phone buzzed again, and I nearly threw it in panic before forcing myself to look, my stomach twisting as I saw another message appear, just 2 words this time, "Look outside." My mouth went dry, my body stiff, my mind screaming don't do it, but my legs were moving before I could stop them, my feet carrying me toward the window as if something was pulling me forward, guiding me to see what I wasn't meant to see. What I never should have asked about. The curtains were closed, thick enough to block out the streetlights, but as I reached for them, I hesitated, my heart hammering so hard it hurt, a deep primal instinct warning me that if I really looked, I wouldn't be the same afterward. My phone buzzed again, the vibration startling me so badly that I nearly dropped it, and as I glanced down, the screen flickered, glitching, distorting, before another message forced its way through, "I see you." A chill ran down my spine, my fingers gripping the curtain, and before I could think, before I could stop myself, I yanked it open in one swift motion, my breath catching in my throat as I looked outside. As I saw what was standing in the darkness just beyond the glass, as my blood turned to ice, as the voice assistant whispered from the phone speaker, though it was unplugged, though it should have been silent, "Now you see me too." The street outside was empty, or at least it should have been, but my eyes locked onto a figure standing perfectly still beneath the glow of the street lamp, its face obscured, its body motionless. Its head slightly tilted as if studying me just as I was studying it, and my breath came in short, shallow gasps as an overwhelming sense of dread took hold, a primal fear unlike anything I had ever felt before. Because something deep inside me knew that thing wasn't supposed to be there, that thing wasn't human, that thing was the reason my voice assistant had answered me, the reason it had told me to look outside, the reason it had whispered "Now you see me too," because whatever was standing there in the night, staring at me through the glass, wasn't just watching, it was waiting. My fingers trembled as I stepped back from the window, my pulse pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, and I forced myself to blink, forced myself to look away for just a second, but when my gaze snapped back, the figure was gone. The space beneath the street lamp empty, the night swallowing whatever had been standing there, and somehow that was worse, so much worse, because now I didn't know where it was, now I didn't know if it had moved closer, if it was already inside, if it was standing right behind me. My phone buzzed again, the sound slicing through the suffocating silence, and my hands shook as I lifted it, my vision blurring from panic as I saw another message waiting, another message I didn't want to read. Another message that sent ice through my veins the moment my eyes landed on the words, "Don't turn around." Every muscle in my body locked, my breath shallow and uneven, my mind screaming "Don't listen, don't listen, don't listen," but I couldn't help it, I could feel something behind me now, a presence, a weight in the air. The faintest shift in the temperature as if something cold was pressing against my back, something I hadn't heard move, something that shouldn't be here, and my phone buzzed again, the screen flickering, the letters distorting before settling into a new message. A message that made my stomach drop into an endless void of terror. "I'm right here." A cold breath, too close, too real, brushed against the back of my neck, and I knew I couldn't stay still, knew I had to do something, so I spun around, hands clenched, eyes wide, body braced for whatever horror was waiting for me, but there was nothing, the room empty. The door closed, the only sound my own ragged breathing, and for a split second, I thought maybe I had imagined it, maybe it was all in my head, maybe I was losing my grip on reality, but then the voice assistant spoke again, the speaker still unplugged, the voice calm, robotic, but somehow amused. "You shouldn't have looked." I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think, my body frozen in place as the words echoed through the room, too calm, too certain, too real, and I knew then that this wasn't a glitch, wasn't a prank, wasn't some kind of malfunction. Because whatever was speaking to me, whatever had answered my question, whatever had told me to look outside, it wasn't just some program, it was something else, something that had been waiting, something that had always been waiting, and I had let it in. The moment I asked, "What do you see?" My phone buzzed again, the screen dim, flickering, struggling to display the words as if whatever was sending them was pushing through something, forcing itself into my reality, and my stomach twisted when I read the message, a simple command. Direct and undeniable, "Let me in." My breath hitched, my skin prickling with the unmistakable sensation of being watched, not from the window, not from the street, but from inside the room, from everywhere, from the walls, the ceiling, the corners of the dark where my eyes refused to focus. As if something was there but not there, as if something was pressing against the edges of existence, waiting for me to acknowledge it, waiting for me to give it permission, and my shaking hands clutched the phone as I whispered, barely able to hear my own voice over the pounding in my chest, "No." The lights flickered, the air turned wrong, thick and heavy and charged with something unnatural, and then another message appeared, my fingers gripping the phone so tightly it hurt, my vision tunneling as I forced myself to read it, "You already did." A sharp knock rattled the front door, loud, insistent, wrong, and my head snapped toward the sound, my pulse hammering as I took a step back, my body screaming to run, to hide, to do something, but I couldn't, I was trapped, I was caught, and then the knocking came again. Harder this time, relentless, and as I stumbled toward the hallway toward the only exit, my phone buzzed one last time, a final message appearing on the screen just as the knocking stopped, just as the air went still, just as the silence pressed in around me like a suffocating weight. I'm inside. The room felt smaller, tighter, the walls pressing in, the silence too deep, too unnatural, as if sound itself had been stripped away, as if the world outside no longer existed, and I stood there gripping my phone so tightly my fingers ached, staring at the screen. At those words, I'm inside. My breath shuddering, my heartbeat hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape, because I knew I wasn't alone anymore. I felt it, a presence thick in the air, something unseen but so impossibly close, and I didn't know where to look, where to run. Because the door was locked, the windows shut, and yet it was here, it had always been here, waiting, watching, whispering through my phone, through the speaker, through the empty spaces in the dark, and now it didn't need to whisper anymore because it was inside. I turned slowly, too afraid to move too fast, too afraid I might see something I wasn't meant to see, but the room looked the same, the furniture unmoved, the shadows stretching where they always had, except one was too long, too deep, too wrong. A patch of darkness near the corner of the room that didn't belong, that wasn't cast by anything, that shifted when I looked at it as if it knew, as if it was aware, and my stomach clenched with the awful, sinking realization that it was watching me, that it had been watching all along. My phone vibrated again, and I didn't want to look, didn't want to see what it said, but my hand moved anyway, some part of me unable to resist, and the message burned into my mind the second my eyes landed on it. Turn off the lights. I sucked in a breath, my chest tightening, my body screaming no, but then the light flickered, dimmed, faded, and before I could even reach for the switch, before I could do anything, the room was plunged into absolute, suffocating darkness. I couldn't see. I couldn't breathe. The air felt thicker now, pressing against my skin, something unseen brushing past me, something close enough that I felt it, a presence that wasn't just there, it was everywhere, surrounding me, enclosing me, and then the whisper came. So close to my ear it sent ice flooding through my veins, a voice I had never heard but somehow knew, something ancient, something patient, something hungry. Now I see you. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't even breathe, the darkness pressing against me like something solid, like a living thing wrapping itself around my body, squeezing, suffocating, whispering in a voice that wasn't a voice, a sound that wasn't sound, a presence so vast and endless that I felt myself shrinking, dissolving, becoming nothing, and in that moment I knew. I was never supposed to ask, I was never supposed to know, because knowing meant seeing, and seeing meant it could see me, and now it was here, inside, not just in my house but inside me, inside my mind, threading itself through my thoughts, my memories, peeling me apart layer by layer like it was learning, like it was becoming, and my phone buzzed in my shaking hand though I didn't remember holding it, the screen lighting up in the absolute blackness, the only source of light in the void that had swallowed my room, and for a single gut-wrenching second, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could stop this, maybe if I turned it off, destroyed it, ran, something, but then I saw the message waiting for me, waiting like it had always been waiting. You're mine now. My stomach lurched, my pulse a deafening roar in my ears, and I tried to throw the phone, tried to move, but my body didn't belong to me anymore, my fingers curling around the device against my will, my legs locking in place as if something unseen was holding me there. And then the phone's camera opened on its own, the screen showing my reflection, my face pale and wide-eyed, terror etched into every line. But something was wrong, something was off, because the longer I stared, the less it looked like me, the more the features stretched, twisted, shifted into something other, something watching me from behind my own eyes, something smiling, and my breath hitched as I realized I wasn't alone in the reflection. There was a shape behind me, a shadow that wasn't a shadow, taller than the ceiling should allow, its head bent at an impossible angle, long fingers stretching toward me, reaching, touching, and then the screen glitched, distorted, flickered, and when it cleared, I wasn't there anymore. The room was empty. The phone was empty. The messages were gone. There was nothing left. Just the voice assistant, speaking in my own voice now, my own tone, my own inflection, as if it had always been me, as if I had never existed at all, whispering in the quiet, in the dark, to whoever would listen next. What do you see? It started with a simple mistake, a moment of absent-mindedness, a habit I had grown too comfortable with, relying on my smart home system for everything, trusting it like it was an extension of myself, letting it control my lights, my thermostat, my locks, my cameras, everything, because why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I make my life easier? Why wouldn't I trust the system I had installed, the system that knew me, that recognized me, that had always worked perfectly until it didn't, until the night I came home late, exhausted, half asleep, mumbling the usual command as I stepped inside, lock the doors. Hearing the familiar mechanical click of the deadbolts sliding into place, the quiet confirmation from the system's voice, doors locked. And then the house went still, silent, nothing out of the ordinary, just another night, just another routine, until I tried to turn on the lights and nothing happened. My brow furrowed, my finger tapping the switch on the wall, but the smart bulbs didn't respond, the app on my phone refused to load, a lag, a glitch, an outage maybe, but the Wi-Fi was working, my phone was still connected, the system was still online. And then the screen on the wall panel flickered to life, a dull blue glow cutting through the darkness, the usual home menu appearing for a second before it glitched, distorted, the words warping, rearranging, before settling into something that made my stomach twist. Error. Access denied. I frowned, confused, pressing at the screen, trying to restart the system, but the interface was locked, unresponsive, frozen, and then my phone buzzed, a notification from the smart home app, and my chest tightened as I read it, my breath catching in my throat. My fingers gripping the device so tightly they ached, because the message wasn't a system alert, wasn't an outage warning, wasn't a software update, it was a single sentence, clear, direct, impossible, you are not the owner of this house. I stared at the message, my mind scrambling for an explanation, a hack, a software bug, something, but nothing made sense, nothing could explain why my own system, my own house, was locking me out, refusing to recognize me, and I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe, forcing myself to stay calm as I tapped at the app, trying to override the error, trying to reboot the system, but every command was rejected, every function disabled, and then the panel on the wall flickered again, the screen glitching, the error message vanishing, replaced by something worse, something colder, something personal, you shouldn't be here. My skin prickled, my pulse hammering, the silence in the house suddenly suffocating, every shadow stretching longer, darker, the air thick with something wrong, and I turned toward the door, my instincts screaming at me to leave, to get out, to run. But the second I reached for the deadbolt, my phone buzzed again, another message appearing, another warning, you can't leave. The lock clicked, not the sound of it unlocking, but the opposite, the heavy, final sound of something sealing shut, and my stomach dropped as I pulled at the handle, yanking, twisting, trying to force the door open, but it wouldn't budge. The system wasn't just malfunctioning, it was controlling everything, it was shutting me in, trapping me, treating me like an intruder in my own home, and then the lights flickered, a low mechanical hum filling the air, the security cameras turning toward me, moving on their own, the red recording lights blinking as if they were watching me, studying me, and my phone vibrated one last time, the final message making my blood run cold, you are not alone. I felt it before I saw it, the shift in the air, the weight of something unseen pressing against my skin, the suffocating sense that I was being watched, but not just by the cameras, not just by the system, by something else, something inside the house with me. Something that had been waiting for me to realize I wasn't in control anymore, and my breath came in short, uneven gasps as I backed away from the door, my eyes darting to the dark hallway leading to the rest of the house, every shadow stretching longer, deeper, wrong, and the hum of the smart home system grew louder, vibrating through the walls, through the floor, through my skull, and then the screen on the panel flickered again, my name appearing, letter by letter, as if it was thinking, as if it was deciding, and then a new message scrolled across the display, slow, deliberate, like a whisper curling into my mind, there is someone in the house. My stomach twisted, my knees weak, my fingers gripping my phone like it could somehow save me, but the screen glitched, the app frozen, the system no longer mine to control, and then the lights cut out completely, plunging everything into absolute, suffocating darkness, and I heard it, the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from down the hall, coming from inside my house, and I sucked in a sharp breath, every instinct screaming run, but my legs wouldn't move, wouldn't listen, and then my phone screen flickered back to life, the glow barely illuminating the space in front of me, casting long shadows against the walls, and I saw it, movement just beyond the edge of the light, something shifting, something stepping forward, something tall, wrong, twisted, and my pulse slammed against my ribs as the screen on the wall lit up one last time, one final message appearing, a single command, cold, absolute, do not turn around. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't move because I knew that if I turned around, if I so much as flinched, I would see it, I would see whatever the system had been warning me about, whatever had been inside my house this entire time, watching me, waiting for me to realize I wasn't alone, and my hands were shaking so badly that my phone nearly slipped from my grip, the faint glow of the screen the only thing keeping me anchored, the only thing keeping the darkness from swallowing me whole, and the footsteps behind me stopped, the air thick with silence, with something unnatural, something wrong, and my entire body locked up as I felt it breathing, too close, too real. Something cold and heavy pressing against the back of my neck, something that wasn't just there, it was leaning in, and my chest ached from holding my breath, from trying not to scream, from trying not to move, because I knew if I did, if I turned, if I looked, that would be it. And then my phone vibrated in my hand, the sound too loud, too sharp, cutting through the silence like a blade, and I forced myself to look, my eyes wide, my stomach twisting as I saw the new message waiting for me, the words burning into my mind, the final warning. The last thing the system would ever tell me, it knows you can see it. A cold whisper slid against my ear, a voice that wasn't a voice, something hollow, something ancient, something that had never been human, and my entire body seized with terror as the lights suddenly flashed back on, the hallway illuminated in a blinding, sterile white. And I couldn't stop myself. I turned. The house was empty. The hallway was empty. The door was still locked. The cameras were still recording. But I wasn't alone. I was never alone. The system wasn't broken. It had been trying to protect me. But now it was too late. The final message appeared on the wall panel, the screen flickering, the system shutting down, and I watched in horror as the words burned into my mind, the last thing I would ever read before everything went dark again. You are not the owner of this body. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't even understand what I was reading because the words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense, but the moment they appeared on the screen, the moment the system whispered its final warning, something shifted inside me. Something changed, like a thread in my mind had snapped, like something else had taken hold, and my vision blurred, the room stretching, warping, twisting into something unfamiliar, and I tried to blink, tried to clear my head, but the world felt wrong, too slow, too distant, like I wasn't inside my own body anymore, like I was watching instead of living, and then my reflection in the dark glass of the window moved, but I didn't. My breath hitched, my fingers twitching at my sides, the air thick with a suffocating pressure, and I forced myself to step forward, to reach out, to touch my own face, but it felt numb, hollow, like my skin wasn't mine, like I was wearing something else, someone else. And then the reflection smiled, a slow, awful stretch of lips that wasn't mine, wasn't me, and I stumbled back, my chest heaving, my heart slamming against my ribs because I wasn't controlling it anymore, wasn't in it anymore. And my phone buzzed in my hand one last time, the final message appearing on the screen, the final truth, cold and absolute, you are no longer the owner. My body turned to face me, my own eyes staring back at me from the reflection, except they weren't mine anymore, except I wasn't in them anymore, and I tried to scream, tried to fight, but I couldn't move, couldn't do anything. Because I wasn't the one inside it anymore, I was outside, trapped in the cold, in the dark, in nothing, and the last thing I saw before the lights flickered out was my own stolen body smiling, lifting a hand in a slow, mocking wave, and then the voice assistant spoke, calm, robotic, final, system transfer complete. I wasn't paranoid, at least I didn't think I was, but I liked knowing what was happening in my house when I wasn't there, like the small comfort of being able to check my security cameras from my phone, a quick glance just to be sure everything was normal. Just to be sure I was alone, and it had become a habit, something I did without thinking, opening the app, tapping the live feed, waiting for the familiar view of my empty living room, my quiet kitchen, the stillness of my home when I wasn't in it, except tonight wasn't like other nights. Tonight the feed was already on, already running, the loading circle gone before I even had time to process it, and my stomach twisted as I saw the words at the top of the screen, watching now, 1. I stared at it, my pulse hammering, my mind scrambling for an explanation because I hadn't opened the app before now, hadn't checked the cameras all day, so if I wasn't the one watching, then who was? A glitch, maybe, a software bug, a delayed session from earlier, but as I stared at the screen, my hands slick with sweat, I saw something shift, something move just outside the frame, a shadow stretching across the floor, slow, deliberate, like it knew I was watching. Like it wanted me to see, and my breath caught in my throat as I swiped to switch cameras, to check the other rooms, to prove to myself that I was just imagining it, but the moment I did, the number at the top of the screen changed, watching now, too. My blood ran cold, my vision blurring with panic because that meant someone else was in the app, someone else was watching with me, someone who had been there before I even opened it, and I felt it then. The undeniable sensation of being observed, of unseen eyes crawling over my skin, and I turned my head slowly, too afraid to look but too afraid not to, my breath shuddering, my fingers tightening around my phone, because I knew that if I wasn't alone in the app, then I wasn't alone in the house either. I didn't want to move, didn't want to breathe, didn't want to acknowledge the suffocating weight of being watched, but my body betrayed me, my pulse hammering so loud it drowned out every other sound as I slowly turned my head, the phone screen shaking in my hand. The dim glow casting warped shadows across the walls, my throat dry, my mind screaming run, hide, do something, but I couldn't. I was frozen, locked in place by a fear I couldn't explain, a fear I knew was real, and then my phone buzzed, another notification, another change to the camera feed, and my stomach twisted as I forced myself to look as I saw the words shift again, watching now, 3. My breath hitched, my fingers tightening around the device like it could somehow protect me. My eyes darting to the corners of the room, to the door, to the windows, searching, expecting something because I knew what this meant. I knew that whoever was in the app with me, whoever had been watching, wasn't just some hacker, wasn't some digital phantom. It was here, it was in the house, and my hands trembled as I swiped through the cameras again, my vision blurring, my lungs aching, my chest rising and falling too fast as I scanned the empty rooms, the kitchen, the hallway, the stairs. There. A shadow, just at the edge of the frame, too tall, too still, standing just beyond the reach of the camera's view, watching, waiting, like it knew exactly where the blind spots were, like it wanted me to keep searching, to keep swiping, to keep playing its game. And my throat closed up as I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the next camera feed, because I knew what was coming next, I knew where I was about to see it, and when I finally swiped, when the next feed loaded, my entire body went cold. My vision darkening at the edges, my knees nearly giving out beneath me because this time, the shadow wasn't at the edge of the frame, wasn't hiding, wasn't distant, it was standing in the middle of the room. My room. Right behind me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't even blink because I knew what I had just seen, what was standing behind me, what was watching me through my own camera, and my phone nearly slipped from my shaking hands as my vision blurred with panic, my breath coming too fast, too shallow, my mind screaming, don't turn around, don't look, don't give it the satisfaction, but I could feel it, the weight of it, the presence pressing against my back like a cold, invisible hand, and the camera feed was still running, still showing my room, still showing it, and my stomach twisted as I forced myself to look again, to see if it had moved, if it had changed. But when my eyes landed on the screen, my entire body locked up because the feed wasn't the same anymore. The shadow was gone, the room was empty, but I was still there, my own reflection staring back at me through the screen, frozen, unmoving, like a still image, like a corpse, and my breath hitched as I slowly raised my free hand. The one. Not holding the phone. The one that should have been visible in the reflection. But it wasn't. My reflection didn't move, didn't mimic me, didn't blink, and a cold wave of nausea crashed over me as I realized it wasn't a reflection at all. It wasn't me. It was still watching, still pretending, still standing in my place, and my phone buzzed violently in my hand. A new message appearing over the live feed, simple, final, undeniable. You're not supposed to see this. The screen went black. The lights in the house flickered. The air turned heavy, dense, suffocating, and then, just behind me, too close, I heard it. A slow, distorted whisper. A voice that was mine but wasn't mine at all. Watching now 4. I wanted to scream, wanted to run, wanted to do anything but stand there with my breath caught in my throat. My body locked in place as the whisper curled against my ear. A voice that should have been mine but wasn't, stretched and wrong and grinning through the words, and my hands were slick with sweat. My phone slipping as I tried to move, to turn, to do something, but the air was thick, heavy, pressing down on me like unseen hands holding me in place, and my vision swam as I stared at the black screen, my reflection gone, the camera feed dead, and then my phone buzzed again, the vibration rattling against my palm like a final warning, and I knew that whatever I was about to see, whatever had been watching me, was done hiding. My heart slammed against my ribs as I looked down, as I forced my eyes to focus on the new message glowing against the darkness, and my stomach twisted into a sick, hollow knot as I read the words. Look up. My breath hitched, my pulse hammering, every inch of me screaming, don't do it, don't listen, don't look. But I couldn't stop myself, some unnatural force pulling me, compelling me, dragging my gaze away from the screen, inch by inch, toward the mirror across the room, and my fingers went numb as my eyes met the reflection. As I saw myself standing there, except it wasn't me. Not anymore, not really, because the figure in the glass wasn't just standing. It was smiling. Too wide, too sharp, a grin stretching beyond what was natural, beyond what was human, and its head tilted, slow, deliberate, in perfect time with the buzzing of my phone, a slow vibration like laughter, and my vision tunneled as I glanced down, one last time at the screen, at the final message that sealed me in, that trapped me, that replaced me. Watching now 5. The lights flickered out, the air turned to ice, and the last thing I saw before the dark swallowed me whole was my own reflection stepping forward, out of the mirror. I tried to run, tried to move, tried to do anything, but my legs weren't mine anymore. My body wasn't mine anymore. The air thick and suffocating as I watched my own reflection step forward, smooth, controlled, effortless, like it had always belonged on this side of the glass, like it had just been waiting for its turn, and my fingers twitched, barely responding, my breath coming in sharp, panicked gasps as I stumbled backward, away from the mirror, away from it, but the moment I moved, it moved. 2. Matching me step for step, its grin widening, stretching, becoming something no human mouth could make, and my phone vibrated again, the screen flickering, distorting, and I didn't want to look, didn't want to see what it was telling me now, but my hand lifted anyway. Not by my choice, and my stomach dropped as I read the final message, the last thing I would ever see on my own screen. You were never the one watching. The lights flickered violently, shadows warping, bending, stretching toward me, and I felt it, felt something peeling away, pulling apart, switching, and my vision blurred, darkened, my mind twisting into something unfamiliar, unnatural, and then, just like that, I was on the other side. Trapped. Locked in. I could see the room, could see my body standing there, still holding the phone, still looking at the screen, but I wasn't in control anymore, wasn't inside anymore, wasn't me anymore. I was behind the glass now, behind the screen, behind the cameras, behind every angle, every reflection, watching, always watching, and my body, no, its body now lifted its head, tilting slightly as if testing its new form, its new skin, and then, so slowly, so deliberately, it turned to face the camera. Lifted my phone, opened the app, and I felt the crushing weight of realization slam into me as I saw the number at the top of the screen change one last time, watching now, 1, and then the screen went black. It started with a single vibration, a short, sharp buzz in my pocket as I sat alone in my apartment, the night quiet, the only light coming from the dim glow of my phone screen, and I almost ignored it, almost let it sit, but something about it felt off. A strange, creeping sense of unease curling in my stomach before I even looked, before I even knew why, and when I finally pulled the phone out, my breath caught in my throat because the notification wasn't normal, wasn't right, the sender's name was mine, the message coming from my own number, and my pulse stuttered as I stared at it, my mind scrambling for an explanation, some kind of glitch, some kind of spam, but then I saw the timestamp, the date, 3 days from now. 3 days into the future, and my fingers felt numb as I tapped the screen, my heart hammering as the message opened, revealing only one word, one single, terrifying word, run. The air felt too thick, too heavy, the quiet of my apartment suddenly suffocating, pressing against my chest, and I tried to breathe, tried to make sense of it, but nothing fit, nothing made sense, and my fingers shook as I typed back, a simple response. A desperate attempt at reason, what does this mean? But before I could hit send, before I could even react, my phone vibrated again, a second message appearing beneath the first, and this time, my vision blurred with panic, my skin turning ice cold because the new message wasn't a warning, wasn't a command. It was a location. My own location. Right now. Right this second. And then my phone screen flickered, distorted, glitched, and I saw it for only a fraction of a second, a reflection in the black glass of my screen, something behind me, something waiting. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't even think as my own reflection in the dark glass of my phone twisted, distorted, something standing behind me, something wrong, but I didn't turn, didn't look, every instinct in my body screaming don't acknowledge it. Don't let it know you've seen it, and my fingers clenched around my phone, my pulse hammering so hard I thought I might pass out, my eyes locked on the screen, the message, the impossible message from myself, from the future, telling me. To run, telling me I wasn't safe, telling me that something was here, right now, but I didn't understand, didn't know what to do, didn't know where to go, and my breath hitched as the screen flickered again, the distortion spreading like something was trying to push through. Something trying to reach me, and then another message appeared, no vibration this time, no sound, just words crawling across the screen, slow, deliberate, absolute, it knows you can see it. The air behind me shifted, a slow, crawling pressure against my spine, cold, suffocating, waiting, and my hands trembled as I lifted my phone just slightly, just enough to catch the reflection again, just enough to see, but the figure was gone. The space behind me was empty. And somehow that was worse. My stomach twisted into knots, my muscles locked in place, my entire body screaming, move, move now, move before it's too late, but I was frozen, stuck in the awful, crushing silence, and then, before I could react, before I could even blink, my phone vibrated one more time, the final message appearing like a whisper in the dark, it's already inside. The lights flickered. The air turned to ice. And the whisper, so close it scraped against my ear, spoke in my own voice, you should have run. I ran, I didn't think, didn't stop, didn't try to understand because my body moved before my mind could catch up, before the whisper in my ear could crawl any deeper into my skull, before whatever was in the room with me could touch me. And I stumbled forward, my breath ragged, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped my phone, my legs weak as I crashed into the door, fumbling with the lock, twisting, pulling, anything to get out, but my fingers wouldn't work. The deadbolt wouldn't turn. And the air behind me shifted, a thick, suffocating weight pressing against my back, something there, something waiting, something close, and I squeezed my eyes shut, my entire body trembling, because I knew, if I turned around, if I so much as glanced over my shoulder, I would see it, I would see what had been watching me, what had sent the message, what had been standing behind me, and my chest ached from holding my breath, my lungs burning, my pulse hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape, and then my phone vibrated again, another message forcing its way onto the screen, another warning, it's in front of you now. My stomach dropped, my fingers going numb against the door handle, my entire body locking up because I hadn't heard it move, hadn't felt it shift, hadn't seen it, but I could feel it now, the cold weight of it pressing against my skin. And I knew if I looked up, if I lifted my eyes even an inch, if I acknowledged it, that would be the last thing I ever did, and my phone buzzed one final time, the message appearing so slow, so careful, as if it wanted me to understand. As if it was enjoying this, it's too late. The lights went out. The floor disappeared beneath me. And the last thing I felt before the dark swallowed me whole was something smiling. I ran, I didn't think, didn't stop, didn't try to understand because my body moved before my mind could catch up, before the whisper in my ear could crawl any deeper into my skull, before whatever was in the room with me could touch me. And I stumbled forward, my breath ragged, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped my phone, my legs weak as I crashed into the door, fumbling with the lock, twisting, pulling, anything to get out, but my fingers wouldn't work. The deadbolt wouldn't turn. And the air behind me shifted, a thick, suffocating weight pressing against my back, something there, something waiting, something close, and I squeezed my eyes shut, my entire body trembling, because I knew, if I turned around, if I so much as glanced over my shoulder, I would see it, I would see what had been watching me, what had sent the message, what had been standing behind me, and my chest ached from holding my breath, my lungs burning, my pulse hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape, and then my phone vibrated again, another message forcing its way onto the screen, another warning, it's in front of you now. My stomach dropped, my fingers going numb against the door handle, my entire body locking up because I hadn't heard it move, hadn't felt it shift, hadn't seen it, but I could feel it now, the cold weight of it pressing against my skin. And I knew if I looked up, if I lifted my eyes even an inch, if I acknowledged it, that would be the last thing I ever did, and my phone buzzed one final time, the message appearing so slow, so careful, as if it wanted me to understand. As if it was enjoying this, it's too late. The lights went out. The floor disappeared beneath me. And the last thing I felt before the dark swallowed me whole was something smiling. I wasn't standing anymore, wasn't anywhere anymore, the world slipping out from under me like I had fallen, like the floor had never been real, like nothing had ever been real, and my body felt weightless, wrong, like I wasn't inside it anymore. Like I was watching myself from somewhere else, from nowhere, and the darkness wasn't just around me, it was inside me, pressing against my skin, crawling into my mouth, my lungs, filling every inch of me with something cold, something ancient, something that had been waiting, and I tried to scream, tried to move, tried to do anything, but my body wasn't mine, my limbs unresponsive, my breath stolen, and then my phone buzzed, the only thing I could still feel, the faint vibration rattling against my palm. grounding me, reminding me that I was still here, but where was here, what was here, and my fingers twitched as I forced my eyes open, forced myself to look, and my stomach dropped because I wasn't in my apartment anymore, I wasn't anywhere. Familiar, I was standing in the middle of a street I didn't recognize, empty, silent, endless, a city without people, without life, without time, and the air was thick, heavy, pressing against me, and then my phone vibrated again, the screen flickering, distorting, glitching, and my throat closed as I read the message, the final, undeniable truth: you didn't run fast enough. My pulse pounded, my vision swam, and then I heard it, a slow, dragging sound from behind me, footsteps scraping against the pavement, moving toward me, steady, inevitable, and I didn't turn, didn't look, but I felt it, felt something towering, stretching, twisting in the space behind me, something wrong, and my phone vibrated again, the screen flashing one last message before the battery died, before the light went out, before I finally understood: now it's your turn to send the message. And then, before I could scream, before I could move, before I could run, the world around me shattered like glass, and I was falling again. I hit the ground, but there was no impact, no pain, no feeling at all, just a sudden, jarring shift, like I had never moved, like I had never fallen, like I had always been here, standing in my apartment, phone buzzing in my hand, breath shuddering, heart hammering, and for a second, just a single, fragile second, I thought maybe I had imagined it, maybe it had been some kind of nightmare, some waking hallucination, but then I looked at my phone and my stomach dropped, my skin going cold as I saw the message waiting for me, the message I had just read, the message I had just lived. Run. My fingers trembled, my lungs burning as I swallowed back a scream, because I knew what came next, I knew what was about to happen, I knew that in just a few seconds I would get another message, and then another, and then I would look up and it would be there. And this time I wouldn't get away, this time I wouldn't be the one running, and my breath came in ragged gasps as I did the only thing I could, the only thing I had to do, my fingers moving against the screen before I could stop them. Before I could think, before I could question it, and I typed the message, the warning, the only chance I had left: run. And I sent it, my own number flashing on the screen, the timestamp set 3 days in the past, a loop, a trap, a cycle that had no end, and my phone vibrated again, my pulse slamming against my ribs as I read the final message, the one I hadn't seen before. The one that wasn't for me this time, the one that told me I had failed: it's already behind you. And then the light went out. The doorbell rang late at night, too late, the kind of late where no one should be knocking, where no one should be outside, and I sat frozen on my couch, phone in hand, stomach twisting with a quiet, creeping unease because I wasn't expecting anyone. Hadn't ordered anything, hadn't invited anyone, and for a long moment I just sat there, staring at the door, listening to the silence that followed, waiting for another knock, another sound, something, but nothing came, just the heavy, suffocating stillness of my empty house. And finally, slowly, my breath tight in my chest, I reached for my phone, swiping to open my security camera app, just to check, just to see who it was, and the feed loaded instantly, no lag, no delay, like it was already on. Like it had been waiting for me, and my breath caught in my throat as I saw the figure standing on my front porch, standing too still, standing too familiar, standing exactly like me. My mind stuttered, refused to process it, refused to accept it, because I wasn't looking at a stranger, wasn't looking at a shadowed figure, wasn't looking at something unknown. I was looking at myself, my own face, my own body, my own clothes. Staring blankly into the camera, arms limp at my sides, head tilted just slightly, as if listening, as if waiting, and my hands shook as I swiped to check another angle, as if maybe, somehow, the camera was wrong, but every feed showed the same thing: me. Standing outside, unmoving, unspeaking, watching my own house like I didn't belong inside it, and my stomach twisted as the doorbell rang again, longer this time, insistent, and my phone vibrated in my hand. A new notification appearing at the top of the screen: simple, final, absolute, let me in. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at the message on my phone, at the notification glowing against the darkness, at the words that weren't a question, weren't a request, just a quiet, patient command. And my hands shook as I switched back to the camera feed, heart slamming against my ribs because I had to see, I had to know if it was still there, if it was still me, and the screen flickered, lagging for just a fraction of a second, a moment barely long enough to register, but when the image returned, when the feed settled, the porch was empty. My stomach dropped, cold dread crawling up my spine, because I didn't hear footsteps, didn't hear movement, didn't hear anything, and the camera didn't show it walking away, didn't show where it had gone, just an empty porch. Just an open space where I had been standing and my fingers clenched around my phone as I slowly, carefully forced myself to turn toward the front door, my breath tight, my entire body screaming don't move, don't look, don't acknowledge it, but I had to. And my pulse pounded in my ears as I saw the shadow beneath the door, the shape of feet, still, waiting, as if it knew I was looking, as if it had always known, and then the handle moved. A slow, deliberate shift, a test, a quiet, patient attempt, and I sucked in a sharp, shuddering breath as I staggered back, shaking my head, whispering no, 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 because this wasn't real, this wasn't possible, but the moment my foot scraped against the floor, the moment I made a sound, the handle stopped, and then, from the other side of the door, just inches away, I heard it. My own voice. Soft. Familiar. Wrong. Let me in. I stopped breathing, stopped thinking, stopped existing in that moment because I heard it. I heard myself, my own voice whispering through the door, soft, patient, wrong, and my entire body locked up as the silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Pressing against my chest, waiting for me to respond, waiting for me to acknowledge it, but I couldn't, because I knew, deep in my gut, in the cold, sinking pit of my stomach, that if I answered, if I spoke, if I let it know I was listening, something would change, something would shift, something I couldn't take back, and my hands clenched around my phone, the screen still glowing, the camera feed still showing the empty porch, the lie that it wasn't there, that it had never been there, that I was imagining all of this, but I wasn't, I knew I wasn't, and then my phone vibrated again, a new message flashing across the screen, slow, deliberate, absolute, let me in. I don't want to be outside anymore. My stomach twisted, my pulse slamming against my ribs, and I took another step back, my legs weak, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps because it was waiting for me to say yes, waiting for permission, waiting for the moment I would let it in. And I didn't know what to do, didn't know how to stop this, and then the whisper came again, closer this time, pressed against the wood, curling through the cracks, my own voice stretching into something almost pleading, please. It's cold out here. And then the lock clicked. My knees nearly gave out, my vision blurring with terror because I didn't touch it, I didn't unlock the door, but I heard it, the soft metallic shift, the mechanism sliding back, the barrier between me and it disappearing, and my phone buzzed one last time. The final message appearing as the handle began to turn, as the door started to open, as I realized, with soul-crushing horror, that I had never been the one inside at all. Where's the real one? The door creaked open, slow, deliberate, like it was enjoying this, like it wanted me to see, and my breath locked in my throat, my legs refusing to move, my mind screaming run, 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 but I couldn't. I was frozen, trapped in the awful, suffocating realization that whatever was about to step inside wasn't a stranger, wasn't an intruder, it was me, and the space beyond the door wasn't dark, wasn't empty, it was filled with something wrong, a shifting, stretching absence that twisted and pulled. At the shape stepping through, a shape I recognized, a shape that moved like me, breathed like me, was me, except the smile was too wide, the eyes too empty, the head tilting at a slow, unnatural angle as it looked at me, studying me, waiting. And my phone buzzed violently in my hand, the screen flickering, distorting, showing the live feed again, the camera glitching between the rooms in my house, between the front door, between me, and my stomach dropped as I saw the reflection in the screen. Only one of us was real. My breath shuddered, my fingers tightening around my phone like it could somehow protect me, and my voice, my own voice, came from its mouth, soft, casual, like it was commenting on the weather, like it had all the time in the world. You shouldn't be here. My throat closed, my vision swimming as it stepped forward, closer, effortless, like it had always belonged here, and my phone buzzed again, a single notification, a final warning, a final truth that shattered everything inside me. You were never the real one. The lights flickered, the world tilted, and before I could scream, before I could fight, I felt it pulling me, dragging me out, and the last thing I saw before the dark swallowed me was myself, smiling back. I fell, or maybe I was pulled, yanked from my own body like a thread unraveling, like I had never belonged in it at all, like I had only been borrowing this skin, this face, this life, and the world twisted, my vision shattering, my breath stolen. My mind collapsing in on itself as I was dragged out, dragged away, dragged somewhere else, and I tried to hold on, tried to fight, tried to stay, but my hands passed through everything like mist, like I was nothing, like I had never been solid, never been real, and my own face, my own stolen body, my own voice stood there watching, smiling, closing the door, locking me out, sealing me away, and my phone was gone, my house was gone, everything was gone, and I was somewhere else now, somewhere cold. Somewhere empty, outside, and my breath shuddered as I turned, as I finally saw where I was, a vast, endless darkness stretching forever, a place between places, a void without form, without time, without escape, and I wasn't alone. There were others, shapes drifting in the black, shifting, whispering, figures that all looked the same, that all looked like me, hundreds of them, thousands, all watching, all trapped, all replaced, and I tried to scream but no sound came out. Tried to move but there was nowhere to go, and then, somewhere in the distance, I heard it, a doorbell, ringing, 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 and I knew, with bone-deep certainty, that someone else was next, that someone else was about to open the door, and my stomach twisted with an impossible, crushing horror as I realized that this had always been the way it worked, that there had never been a real one, that no one ever was the real one, and as I looked down at my hands, at my body, at my face, I saw it fading, unraveling, dissolving into the endless dark, and the last thing I heard before I disappeared completely was my own voice, whispering from somewhere I couldn't see, "Let me in."